remove the word Bigfoot from it in its Fey lore, line for line, note for note. If you, again, take that step back, remove the names, you'll start seeing how often there's overlap in Bigfoot lore with like the lore of the Fey, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Ireland, they're called fairy braids on horses, where the horses' manes get little, these little braids. People over here, they'll call them witches' braids, but they'll also call them Bigfoot braids.
I've heard of those. That little, just
and
random knots in a horse mane.
Exactly. And people say, oh, no, Bigfoots are coming up and they're talking to the horses and they're braiding the hair. And you're like, that is Fey lore. That is what you hear in Ireland and on the continent about how the Fey operate, that they will go and hang out with horses and they'll braid their hair. It's the same. It's literally the same thing. Also, where are the Fey to be found? And again, don't think fairies like Disney. Think just spirits, right? Because 9 times out of 10, they really don't look that different from humans. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're not. But where are they to be found? In the earth, often in caves that you can't find, that disappear. Okay. What is the thing? What is a theme that keeps popping up over and over again with Bigfoot lore? They live in caves in the earth that we can't find. That just, it's like, okay, hold up. Doesn't this bother anyone else?
It's really exciting me right now. Let me tell you, I wasn't ready to go to this deep this quick, and I'm into it. I'm all freaking for it. By the way,
I should probably say I'm Jason.
I thought we were talking about books. I'm way okay.
Hey,
way okay with this.
Please, we'll go as deep. I interviewed Joshua Cutchin, probably one of the most important researchers working today. He's not a Bigfoot researcher per se, but he's a true academic, and he has a book called Where the Trackways End. I think the best thing he's written is, and honestly, the most important thing is Ecology of Souls. It's a massive tome, but if you want to be serious in any of these fields, you need to look at what he's written there. But one of the things he points out is, here's and this is where I would throw my history in on this. We tend to look, it's like, oh, here's the hairy man traditions in American Indian lore. That must be Bigfoot. That's our assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
We are putting that on that lore. We're saying, oh, it's hairy man lore. That must mean, or wild man lore. That must mean Bigfoot. That's us. That's not them. That's not those elders. That's us putting it on there. So that's something we need to remember. But there is wild man lore of a tribe in Alaska. And one of the things it talks about is, if a Bigfoot gives you, or whatever, I forget what the term that they use, if they give you salmon, you're not supposed to eat it. Otherwise, he will take you into their world. And if you hold on to it, once the Bigfoot leaves, it turns into tree bark. Now, anyone who's familiar with Fey lore, classic Fey lore, should recognize that immediately. If you eat anything in the fairy world, you stay in the fairy world. And when you're done with the encounter, what happens? When they give you things like gold or food, but you don't eat it, but you still have it, once the encounter's over, it turns into leaves or hay or fairy dust. This is where the idea of fairy dust comes from, is they give you the gold, right? You get the fairy gold, and but then once the encounter's over and you've left their realm, it turns to dust. That's the same. It is the exact same motif, same familiar patterns. And again, how often do we hear, I shot it, but it didn't fall down, or I went back and it was gone, right? Or I had, there was the body and I came back and the thing had completely disappeared. Over and over and over again, we see the same. Again, remove the word Bigfoot from it in its Fey lore, line for line, note for note.
Interesting.
We should not turn away from that, because what it means is, again, I'm not saying there isn't a physical creature running around out there. I think there is. I think there's good evidence for that to be the case. However, we cannot turn away from the fact that a lot of people may not be encountering this creature. In fact, more often than not, we may be encountering things that were the Fae, 200 years ago. They were the Jinn 1,000 years ago. They were the Leshy. They were the Shahadim. They're spirits. They are this other thing that's always been here. And it's just got this whole new facade. And again, maybe that's us putting it on them. Maybe they want us to think that they are Bigfoot so that we don't recognize them for what they are, and they can interact with us a little bit more freely with our guard a lot more down.
Interesting. I've considered them being like maybe over here in like sort of like somebody would play a video game, and this what they have here is their avatar. But
Yeah.
I've never considered it being part of like a more cinematic universe like the Fae lore or something like that.
Well, but that's
like
the
that
whole
far.
thing. We in the West of the last 150 years or so, really since you could argue the Industrial Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, we threw away a lot of spiritual and supernatural understanding, right? Even those in the church. My number one complaint is that I hear this all the time is, I don't think any of that's real. And I'm like, you believe in a book that was written by a supernatural being through supernatural encounters about supernatural events, but you don't believe in the supernatural, then maybe you don't really believe the Bible that you claim to believe in.
I've had a hard time with that concept as well, but that's why I kind of believe in all the other stuff as well. Like, so this book is full of that.
Yeah, it's like that's the point. Is that it's a perspective. Again, fundamentally, I don't care what Bigfoot is or any of it. I saw a living pterosaur, right? I don't care what they are. I do care, however, that I believe that once we understand what they are, they fit into I would argue they're evidence for the world of a biblical worldview. Again, Bigfoot, I think, happens to be on both sides. I don't think that our history is what the mainstream would like us to be told. I think the biblical account is far more accurate. And so when you have things like giant relic hominids, it's because they didn't die out tens of thousands of years ago. They're still around because they survived the flood. That's why we see living dinosaurs. That's why we see all these other creatures like the unicorn, which is just a elasmotherium, a giant woolly woolly rhinoceros. The reason we have these accounts of people encountering these creatures that supposedly went extinct thousands or millions of years ago is because they didn't go extinct tens of thousands or millions of years ago. They are the evidence of the fact that the modern worldview is not correct. Same thing with the paranormal. On the paranormal side of Bigfoot, if there are paranormal entities wandering around and their behavior matches certain patterns, then we got to deal with that. And I think that's more indicative of a biblical worldview. But the problem is, in the West, we're like, nope, we like bolts and cars and screwdrivers, and so we're just going to throw all of it out. And so our supernatural worldview is very, very anemic. Half the time we don't even have language to understand it, and we chalk it all up to stuff that Disney puts out. And it's like, guys, this is not the Disney version, is not the real version.
Hey, thanks for watching this best of podcast clip. To catch full episodes, my weekly live show, or just more clips from my podcast, hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching.